Teaching Academy. Thanks all for coming. Really appreciate it. I'm Deb Clark. I'm the Vice Provost for Academic Personnel. And I just wanted to explain a little bit about how this came about, what the genesis of the program is, and how we're envisioning it playing out over the course of the year. It is very much a pilot program. So that means that we are hoping that all of you form it in the way that it will be most useful for the participants. The genesis was because we became increasingly concerned that we really had no support system in place, particularly for incoming faculty in terms of teaching support. It was more kind of find advice where you can, go to your colleagues, go to your unit, which is still, you should still be doing that, no question. There was nothing more formal in place. So we put together what we're calling the Provost Teaching Academy, and we recruited some of the best teachers from across the university, from every campus, to help us staff it. And these are the people who are sitting with you now, who will help facilitate the conversations. And what we decided to do was to set up a series of modules focused on specific aspects or issues in teaching. We surveyed 2 years ago, I guess it was now, our then junior faculty saying if such a program was in place when you came in, what would have been most useful for you? What topics would you like to have seen covered? And so then we tried to select from among the ones that were identified as the most popular. And that means that not all topics will be useful for all participants, because we wanted them to address a wide range. For those who teach large lectures, for those who teach small classes, it's just a variation. And this means that there is no obligation on you to come to these. We strongly encourage it. We hope that you'll help. Not only will it help shape your teaching, but you'll get a chance to meet people in your own incoming cohort beyond your units. And if you participate in 6 out of the 10 modules, including the one today, we'll give you a certificate of completion that you can put in your P&T file as evidence that you have focused attention on your teaching, so that it can be seen as a measure of effective teaching. I don't have a whole lot more to say. I want to give you the tentative schedule. The next module, and we'll be sending all of this out, so don't worry about writing it all down, will be on the flipped classroom on September 14th, large lectures on October 5th, and that one will also highlight technology in the classroom. October 21st is going to be learning outcomes, which will also be a technology-focused workshop. And then the last one of the semester will be the second, Flipped Classrooms Part 2 on November 16th. In the spring, we are anticipating facilitating small group discussions, assessment techniques, being sensitive to diversity and inclusion, teaching controversial subjects, and record-keeping feedback assessment, also focused to a certain extent on technology. So we'll be getting out that spring schedule probably in the next month or two. But that's what's coming. And I have to say that from our Provost Teaching Fellows, the ones who have put all this together, they've worked very hard. They have demonstrated tremendous enthusiasm and commitment to this project. So we're all hopeful that it's going to work out well. And we do encourage whatever feedback you can provide us to help make it better or more useful for you. So thank you again, and let me turn it over to our first presenters out here at the West Campus.
Okay, so should I stand up? This is all sort of weird the way I'm looking at these boards, but my name is Pam Marshall, and I've been at the West Campus since 2003. I am not a first-generation student. I'm not even a second-generation student. My grandfather came off the farm, so he would have been the first-generation student. What Bertha and I really wanted to do with this talk was let you know that whatever notions are written or seen on movies about what a college student is. That's not who we have anymore. In fact, I would say that the college student of today isn't even the college student of 5 years ago. And so we really wanted to make you aware at the beginning that non-traditional is the new traditional. And Bertha has changed the slide here to, I got this from the the quick facts. So we've got 14% transfer students, almost 36.6% minority, and 7.1% international. My numbers are different than Michael's that he had earlier this week. And I think that he's got some sort of special pipeline, Michael Crow that is, a special pipeline into the newest numbers. And it sounds like we have even more non-traditional students than we had before. So we really need to be thinking that what we called even 5 years ago a non-traditional student is really most likely the student that's in your class. And so I'll have Bertha introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Bertha Manninen. I teach philosophy here at the ASU West Campus, and I am a first-generation student. And so this is a topic of particular interest to me, particularly because I'm pretty sure that I would not have graduated college had it not been for the active participation of mentoring of my professors. And so I'm well aware of the impact professors can have, and for that reason, this is a topic, particularly at least being a member of New College, where we approximate close to 50% of our student body is first generation. But we're not going to be talking only about generation. We'll also be talking about transfer students and veterans who I think ASU in particular is taking a very active role in recruiting and mentoring. Particularly, I don't know, we're so close to Luke Air Force Base, so we get a lot of them here at the West Campus.
We get active duty as well as veterans. Yeah.
So we'll start with just a few facts about the first gen students. I think, do we want to encourage conversation throughout, or do we wait till the end or towards the middle? Or
I think the idea was we do the presentation because it's a little awkward, having taped it, and then each location has people there to facilitate discussions afterwards.
Okay. So let's just begin with what that we're talking about. What counts as a first-generation student? A first-generation student is the first person in their immediate family to attend college. Now, that was a different definition that we got. We had a first-generation symposium last week, and one of the definitions was the first person in their family to graduate college, right? So I suppose that if they had a parent who attempted college and didn't finish, that they still count as first generation. So highest level of education that family members have received is either high school diploma or less. Typically, they come from low-income families, though not always. And according to some of our sources, almost 50% of today's college students are first-gen students. Some concerning facts about them is that they typically receive lower grades and have a faster dropout rate. They're actually twice as likely to leave college before their second year than those who have parents who have attended college. And a 2005 report from the National Center of Education notes that in comparison to students who have at least one parent who graduated college, first-gen students typically have lower GPAs and had to take remedial courses in their first year. I had to take 3 semesters of remedial math courses before I was allowed to even start math courses in the university, which began with basic multiplication reviews, even in college. I don't know how much we want to focus on these stats. I mean, we can send out the PowerPoint as well. So, more statistics. 42% of students whose parents attended college graduated within 4 years. Only 27% of first-gen students graduated within 4 years. So in comparison, 60% of students that have parents that did attend college versus 45% graduated within 4 years in the same time frame. So the graduation rates are lower as well. Their GPA is lower, retention rates are lower, graduation rates are lower. So the idea is that what can we do about it, right? Because of the because of the fact that so many of them are from low-income backgrounds, one of the immediate inclinations is to throw money at it, right? And they need it. That's not a bad thing. So, you know, scholarships, help with books, help with room and board. So they're not taking out so much money, and that's absolutely necessary, but it is absolutely not sufficient, right? And so I think that one of the issues is that I think universities are only attending to the financial difficulties that first-gen students face and none of the other difficulties. And so as a result, you're not going to see a lot of retention by just taking care of the financial difficulties. So there's a lot of psychological difficulties that come with being first-gen. A lot of them are plagued with self-doubt. I mean, they come in with imposter syndrome. And some of them never goes away, right? First-gen students often doubt whether they even have the capacity to be at college, whether they should be at college. A lot of them, this is not on here, but from my personal discussions with them, some of them are often plagued with concerns that they only got in because they're minorities, and apparently their peers remind them of that constantly. And U.S. colleges tend to not really approach issues of social class and how that interferes with success in college. And so this is what we talked about. Most of the resources are typically given for to take care of the financial difficulties, but not much else. So here's some of the other non-financial difficulties that first-gen students face. Lack of knowledge about campus environment, academic expectations, bureaucratic operations, lack of adequate academic preparation, and lack of family support. First-gen students may encounter a cultural conflict between home and college community and are likely to perceive less support from their families for attending college. From my experience, a lot of that depends on whether or not the student is expected to contribute financially to the family. Most of them are, a lot of them are, I don't want to say most, but a lot of them are, and so in situations where the family perceives that college is interfering with that responsibility, they will pressure the student away from college and towards get a job, get a more fruitful job, get a more lucrative job. But even in situations where they're not expected to support the family, there's still conflict because, and again, something that I've heard a lot from students is that parents, most first-gen students have parents that are very supportive in theory because they recognize that their child is more likely to succeed with a college degree, but their family is unprepared for what college actually requires of them, right? The kind of workload that's required of them, the amount of study time that they have to do, and so the students face, a lot of them live at home still, so a lot of them go to campus, go home, and so are faced with pressures like, why are you working so hard? What are you doing this? We need here, we need family responsibilities here. And so I've talked to a lot of students that say, my family just doesn't understand the nature of the time commitment, and they're not necessarily respectful of that. So that's what we mean by that. They support college in theory. They want their kids to go to college, but they're unprepared for supporting the actual realities of the workload that entails. So that's another first-gen students who attend community colleges typically attend part-time and are more likely than their classmates to have significant work and family responsibilities. Studies have indicated that one of the most important ways that universities can facilitate success of these students is to have them meet each other. Right? Create events where first-gen students can come together and have an open dialogue about their experiences. Alienation from fellow peers is something that's reported a lot as well. And a vocalization, conversation, dialogue of their difficulties with each other and with professors as well, particularly professors who were also first-generation students, really helped with retention and really helped with having those students get better grades and succeed better. So there are some slides here about personal stories, from using the personal stories of senior college students. We have a peer mentoring program here at the West Campus. I'm pretty sure that's in all the campuses. But for first gen in particular, they might benefit much more from having a peer that is also first gen student that's nearing the end of their college career. So it's not, may not be enough just to have a peer mentor. They probably need a peer mentor with very similar background to help them with their particularly unique questions and situations. Okay. And then this is something that is more, doesn't apply to probably everyone. I don't want to assume that every professor here is a humanities or sciences, but it's something that maybe we could talk about, because I anticipate a lot of us are humanities and sciences, is that first-gen students do not tend to gravitate towards the humanities a lot. They do to the sciences insofar first-gen students have families who want them to be mostly two things, right, doctors and lawyers. And that's I've had a lot of students that have come to me because I teach philosophy, right? So I've had a lot of students that have come to me and I said, I really like your class. I really want to study philosophy more, but my parents would kill me. And so I think we should have a discussion about why that is. It's understandable, right, that parents who are poor, who have struggled with poverty, who are still struggling in poverty, makes perfect sense that what they want is to see their child not suffer those things. And so the children are typically pressured into majors that have a one-to-one correspondence with careers, business majors, computers, sciences if they want to be doctors, and so on and so forth. And so they're not encouraged to take humanities courses too much, definitely not more than what is absolutely necessary, particularly because they're afraid that their child is just not going to get a job. And so because of that, these are the humanities in particular, the more we see increasing first-gen students, I think we need to figure out ways of attracting them to our majors, because humanities majors are already dire. I think it's going to get even worse when the first-gen population increases. And they're just not taking our classes or not majoring in our fields. And so we don't have a lot of time. I do want to have time for discussion, so I do want to move to, we still have transfer students and veteran students to talk about. But if we want to come back and talk about these findings more, these personal stories more, I would welcome that towards whenever it's in the discussion period. So let's talk about our second set of students, transfer students. And do you want to take over that?
Sure.
Or?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure. Can I
Of course.
sit with you? So I did want to tell one anecdote, because my husband is a first-generation college student, and so it was, David, you're so smart. David, be a doctor. David, you're so smart. Go be a doctor. And so then he majored in biology, only to find that he didn't really like science. But then he had a biology degree, and I think he double majored in chemistry, and he didn't know what he wanted to do. So I don't want to be a doctor. What do I want to do? So he applied for a job at Lone Star Brewery, and he applied for graduate school. He didn't get the job, so he went to graduate school. So my husband now he earned his PhD in immunology in something that he doesn't even care about. We don't even talk about science anymore. And he's Caucasian, and so these family pressures of family expectations are really real with our students. I had a student in my office break down and cry because he wanted to be a pharmacist. Pharmacy is a great job. It is a great career, 9 to 5, you're not on call, you don't have to see a lot of body fluids. But his family was deeply disappointed in him, because they didn't want him to go to pharmacy school. He either needed to be a physician or he needed to be an engineer. And so, and he cried. I mean, he cried at the fact that he was letting his family down by only becoming a pharmacist. I mean, holy moly. So these expectations of families and what families believe college should be for and what careers there are a huge burden and weight on students that I think that many of us just don't understand. And so being able to try, I know classes are large, but to try to see if a student will come to you and talk to you about these issues, not daily, maybe once in a semester for 15 or 20 minutes, just letting them know that you understand, really can make a difference between whether the student stays or whether the student goes. So, sorry to make it so personal, but I mean, I think, I like to say that the plural of anecdote is data. So, whether or not that's so with transfer students, Many of you don't know that we had an amazing task force last year come through and doing a lot of work to try to identify how to recruit, retain, and support transfer students better. It was called Transfer Matters, and I believe they're still sorting through the mounds of data, and so I'm hoping that the data will come out, and maybe we can circle back around and have a conversation a little bit better about transfer students. But again, we have lots of transfer students. The interesting thing, at least on West campuses, they'll come here, they'll go back to community college, they'll come back, and so we don't have sort of a seamless on-ramp. They come in, they go off, and they come in again. And so we've got students from transfer from a community college. Background is very varied as well, and so depending on students, they may be here during fall and spring, and then during summer go to the community college and take classes due to better scheduling or differences in pricing. And so we have a lot of students who have community college experience. And so again, transfer students are not a homogeneous population, at least on the task force that I served on last year. We talked a lot about that, about how we were putting them in one spot, and in fact, transfer students themselves have very different goals as well. And so we'll consider their characteristics, understand challenges, and talk a little bit about implications for advising. So community college transfer students seem to have real differences between our native students, and it really depends on the study that you look at. Some of the studies say that they're pretty good at knowing about financial aid and figuring things out, but they do have a culture shock where at least at the community colleges here that I'm aware of in Maricopa County, their classes are capped at 48. And so now all of a sudden a student comes from a class that's got maybe 24 students, 48 students. They come into a class that's got 130 students. They've got a culture shock right there that I think can be quite formidable, because most of our students are now trying to set up relationships with us, and they don't know how to do that in that large class. So they also have problems navigating just serious differences. It seems as though, and again, my experience is here on West Campus, and I'm familiar with Glendale Community College, and they have they seem to have many more clubs and activities and ways for the students to interact. And so I assume it's different at Tempe, but many of the transfer students that I talk to say, I went to Tempe for a semester and it was so huge I couldn't even find a bathroom. And so then they come to West Campus. So being aware of transfer students and the fact that they really come from a very small environment, and how do we get them into a larger environment. So university size, they're very varied in what they're looking for and what they need. Transfer students also have a lower graduation rate, and the data that I've seen is that we don't really understand well, because you would anticipate that transfer students have college under their belt, and so they would be able to come in and do the work here. And so I haven't seen good data on why that is. Again, but mostly talk about this culture shock. It's just really very different. I mean, I've had students come to me and say, I was in an honor program at community college, and I was a 4.0 there, and why am I not doing well here? And my answer is, I don't know, let's sit down and figure out what's going on. So there is this phenomena that isn't well characterized in literature, and I'm hoping that Transfer Matters will get a little bit more into it later on when we get all that data. So we've got differences in teaching styles. I do know that the residential faculty that I interact with at the community colleges, they don't have a research responsibility, and so they often are willing and able to put in more students than we feel that we can because of the research. And so I don't know how, I mean, I think that manifests itself again in the community college student feeling as an other rather than a part of it, an imposter syndrome. And so perhaps out of this we can think about setting up support systems. I know that for the first time on this campus, we're requiring transfer students to take that version of ASU 101. Are we requiring it on other campuses? Probably. I don't know.
Wayne, are we requiring ASU 101 for transfer students on all campuses?
So the transfer version.
No. But that's something we are talking about.
All right, yeah, so I guess we're rolling that out here. And it will actually be very interesting. Maybe we can get that data to see whether or not it does help.
Our Transfer Matters group had that subject, and I believe we are the only campus right now, but we put it in our report to collect the data to see if it should be rolled out elsewhere.
Great. So again, I think a lot of it has to do with not feeling connected. You come from I mean, it would be similar to the culture shock that many people feel when they come from a high school if they're a traditional age student. If you come from a high school and then go to ASU Tempe, I couldn't even imagine it. It's just this huge, what? Unnerving, yeah. Again, to beware, we do not have a way to identify whether or not students are transfer students, and in Transfer Matters we talked a lot about whether or not we should do that, and I think we decided that although it could be helpful to many faculty members, it could also be almost like a red P of shame, right, on that, then people would could be a double-edged sword, whether it was a good idea to identify them or not. And so we had talked in our group about just simply, welcoming transfer students and saying, welcome to ASU. I know many of you are transfer students. Yeah, I know it's different between here and the community college. If you have any issues, come talk to me. And that just simply having that openness to students, they really seem to appreciate that. So just being open to the fact that the average student, I'm looking at the microphone, the average student in the class is not the average student that we used to have. All right, and transfer students ask me routinely about financial aid and about all sorts of things, and so just being able to say, I have no idea about this, but if you go here, then you'll be able to find that information, or even just saying, who's your advisor? Please go see your advisor, because we've got lots of offices here. All right. So the other issue that we see is that students who do well as transfer students mostly self-report that they know when to seek out faculty for help if needed, and that they actually are doing a pretty good job, but the ones that are most self-aware do the best. And so I think with our Uni, it's called Uni 301, with our Uni 301, which is ASU 101 for transfer students, I believe that they're putting in some of what you call metacognition, self-awareness to the students to have a little bit of resiliency, and they call it grit. It's shown up a lot in New York Times, right, about students who have grit, just, to be able to help seek out some help, because I think another difference between community colleges here in Maricopa and ASU is that the faculty member, I as a faculty member expect if a student is struggling, I'll send them an email. I'll maybe reach out once, but then they've got to come back. And I think at community college, they extend out and ask if they need help much more. That's an issue frankly, of just the logistics of having I think, a much larger class and research expectation as well. So I would encourage everyone to fill out the academic status reports. They are easy to do, and students do take them seriously, and advisors get them, students get them, and in the academic status report, we have, it's midterm grades. You can tell the student if they're doing well or not, and they've changed it now where it's not just a drop-down menu. You also can type into it if you want a specific message to the students. And so I would encourage everybody to do that. I don't think it's required for any unit. So that's one way to help transfer students, because some of them don't have a good sense of self about where they are in the class. So to give that to them also helps them. All right, so universities can help. We need students. And again, we should not make the assumption. We shouldn't make any assumption about transfer students. We have great tutoring on campuses now. It is free. Find out where the tutoring centers are on your campus, and at least the tutoring center here on the West Campus, we can invite them to come to our classes and give a short talk about who they are, what they do, and when they do it. And so I have that. And again, transfer students report doing better in smaller upper division courses where they have this better connection. It's all about these connections. I'll do veterans. We'll wrap up quickly. I know the least about veterans, I think, because I will have my students self-identify however they want to identify. And what I've noticed is that students will identify, oh, I'm a first-generation student. Oh, I'm a transfer student, and I don't have a lot of students identifying to me that they're veterans. And so there are many, many veterans on this campus. There is an office of, what is it called, Veterans Affairs. Office of Veterans Affairs on every campus. There are veterans-specific programs and advisors. And so we are trying very hard to support veterans the way we've supported other groups. And so veterans tend to be older, generally because of when they enlisted, and veterans also tend to be less in community colleges and actually more in public 4 years. I shouldn't say veterans, I say veterans in active duty as well. I apologize. And so veterans often deal with many of the similar issues that first generation and transfer do, and a huge one is minority students as well, questioning whether or not they belong and whether or not they should be here and this is the right choice to make. And so a lot of the literature, interestingly, that I've read has to do with this questioning about whether or not you actually belong where you are. And when a dialogue is set up between a student who asks that question and a student or a faculty member who has also asked that question. I mean, if a student comes to me and says, what am I doing here? Depending on what the relationship is and so forth, there are times I'll whip out my transcript and go, look, see, I got some C's. And I go, oh. And that's an eye-opening moment for them to realize that somebody, in whether they're a senior or they're a faculty member, has also questioned whether or not they're there, just simply saying, no, I haven't exactly been in your shoes, but let me tell you this story about what happened to me in graduate school when I, was made fun of for painting my nails. That's a true story. So I think that just simply that connection and letting students know once you identify if they're having an issue that you've had it also, or you've had a similar issue, it really makes a very big difference. Let's see. All right, so we do have services for veterans, and we do have the Veterans Affairs program. There are lots of discussions right now about what we should and shouldn't be discussing in class and trigger warnings. And so in general, I think it's good to just think about what's being covered in class and try to identify if there could be someone in class who would be upset by what is being said. And so I think we'll leave it at that because there's a ton of stuff in the Chronicle this week about that. And so, again, we have orientation programs, and I think what's great about, at least on this campus, our Veterans Affairs is run by veterans. And so, again, active duty as well. And so I really think that we need more advisors, we need more counseling, we need more student support services, and there has to be a way to destigmatize going to them, you know. I mean, students, there are some students who have embraced going to the tutoring center and they really like it, but a lot of students don't want to go to the tutoring center.
So how can our new faculty facilitate that? I mean, because we want to focus on what they can do to interact.
So I think new faculty telling students, yeah, I went to the tutoring center, it's super helpful. Going to the tutoring center yourself as a new faculty member, meeting the tutors, talking with the tutors. Some of our faculty go to the tutoring center and hang out in the tutoring center. And I contact the tutoring center and have actually put old tests in the tutoring center and made sure, hey, tutor, do you have copies of my old tests? Do you have copies of the study guide? And so when students come to you and say, I need help, and you've helped them and they need additional help or tutoring, or I tell my students, I can only explain it to you the way I understand it, so you might want to go see a tutor who will explain it to you in a different way. And then supporting the tutoring center and giving them, you may not have old exams, but study guides or notes or whatever you have, then sets up a relationship between you, the student, and the tutoring center that is, you know, friendly rather than adversarial.
Same with writing assignments. I submit all my writing assignments to the tutor center at the beginning. At the writing center, excuse me, at the beginning of the semester. So that way, if my students go there, the tutor knows exactly what it is that I want, rather than relying on them where they may have misunderstood what I wanted.
So if I could interrupt and just add this, we have lots of data indicating that students who use the tutoring centers do substantially better than students who do not. And in mathematics, for example, the correlation between the number of visits to the tutoring centers and the grades in the math courses is almost a perfect 1.0 correlation. So, and I can provide data to people if they need that, but if you can share that, because sometimes students feel that the only people who use the tutoring centers are students who are weak. But the data indicate that students who use the tutoring centers are smart, savvy, and resourceful, and I try and reinforce that message as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, and just to reinforce what President Crow said at the faculty orientation, we have an incredibly diverse group of students, more diverse than you may have encountered in your own graduate school teaching opportunities, and so we're hoping that this can give you more information on the students you'll be working with here. So,
we actually, this is our last slide, wrap up. ASU students are unique in their demographics and tend towards the non-traditional students. In general, all students are seeking a connection to the place and the people. And they really are seeking many different things. And so there are some students who come and they want a personal connection. There are some students who come and want to talk about careers. And so finding ways to connect with those students who want to connect in a real relationship, because the students really want to feel like they belong and they want to feel like they have this connection, I think a deep connection, and especially a connection to the people more than the place now. And when I went to school, it was more of a connection to the place than the people, at least from what I saw. So they can feel disconnected, like they don't belong, and so just being aware of this feeling of other, being aware that a lot of the students come with this baggage that they're questioning, should I be here, should I not be here, and just reinforcing them and letting them know, say, hey, you know, when I got to college, it was a wake-up call when I took my first chemistry exam, because that was the first C I'd ever gotten in my life. And so to have them know, hey, you know, and then you know, if appropriate, talk to them about ways to overcome that. So this personal connection is huge for the students.
Okay, thank you. As I said, we were hoping that, you know, just knowing a little bit more about the students who are going to be in your classrooms, particularly because they may be somewhat dissimilar to the students you've been teaching all along, and to start thinking about strategies. And I hope in your ensuing follow-up discussions, you can start talking about what, now that you have the information, what kind of response you as teachers will, you know, will make to that, to that information. And
discuss together?
I don't know. Does it make sense to discuss together or in each individual location? What are the? I was thinking each individual location probably, but unless there's, yeah, that's probably better. So, okay. So thank you all. The next one will be, as I said, a little bit more focused on a specific teaching issue, which is the flipped classroom, but we thought it was really important to open up with sort of who you're teaching, who's your audience, which, you know, I'm an English person, and that's the first thing you've got to figure out. Who's the audience, and how do you pitch to that particular audience? So thank you very much.
Thanks, Deb. Thank
you.